What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the No Cap Space, a very special edition of Luxury Tax today. Tyler, Andrew Greer, joined by Kaitlyn Chen of the UConn Huskies. We've been waiting to get a UConn player on here, and we're so excited, Kaitlyn, that, like I said, I was telling you before, we've been trying to get you on since you were at Princeton still last season. We're big fans of your game. We're excited to talk to you today. I'm just interested, how's your summer been? Like, just this whole transition and everything, like, how has it gone for you?
My summer's actually been great. I mean, I think it was the first time where I spent more than 2 weeks at home, which was really, really nice. The past few summers with Princeton, like, we don't have anything for basketball there, but a lot of us end up doing internships somewhere. So I've been in Philly and DC for like the past 2 summers before that. And then this past summer was really nice. We were here in June for workouts, and then we got the rest of summer to be home and go home and train and do stuff there, which is great.
Yeah, and doing our research for this, Tyler found your LinkedIn.
Oh God.
I Googled.
I know.
Like, let's just Google. Let's see what we get. And like 7 searches down, like, look, it's a great LinkedIn page. I'll give it to you.
Thank you. A lot of help from Kathleen, our career counseling advisor at Princeton.
It was the most Ivy League thing I've seen. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it was like that popping up was hilarious. I immediately sent it to them. But I'm interested, I guess, this whole transition, this whole obviously transferring and everything. I'm just intrigued because I can imagine myself walking into UConn for the first time being like, yeah, there's a couple banners, just a couple. Yeah, there's a couple like Hall of Famers, Mount Rushmore type players. I would be overwhelmed by like just like everything that is UConn women's basketball by walking in there. I'm just interested for you, like your first like impression, or like was there like a moment that hit you where I'm like, oh, this is UConn. Like, this is kind of like, this is a unique pedigree of women's basketball. Was there a moment for you during this whole process?
I feel like I had a similar reaction as you probably would. Because I mean, I grew up watching UConn women's basketball, and like it's UConn women's basketball. So walking into like the practice facility, I was like, oh my God, like, wow, this is pretty cool. Just seeing all the banners and seeing everything, seeing all the All-Americans. But that wasn't like my first taste of UConn women's basketball, because we had played them in Gamble when I think it was my junior year. And I remember thinking like, this is one of the coolest places I've ever played in, just to like look up and see all like the banners in Gamble, and even just to play in that kind of atmosphere was pretty special.
So Coach Carla at Princeton obviously has experience, with UConn, having played under Geno. What was her role in the process for you? Did she say, go check it out and enjoy, transfer recruiting for all of the excitement that it is? Or was she like, hey, I do know a school in Storrs, Connecticut that might be a pretty good fit for you, and a guy that would love to have you?
I mean, she was definitely a great resource for me. She says she isn't biased or wasn't biased, but I think there's just a little bit of bias in there. Just a little bit. It's hard not to be. I mean, this is like probably like her favorite place in the US, so it's hard for her not to be biased. But
I'm really curious. You've seen Carla coach, you've seen Geno coach now. Does Carla have any Genoisms?
I think there are definitely some similarities there. I've picked up on like some little phrases that both of them say that I like hear him say here, and I'm like, I've heard that for 4 years. That must be where she got it from. Yeah.
So you transfer to a team that has like a lot of women that will eventually be pros, right? And you're playing the backcourt is just absolutely stacked, right? With you, Paige, AZ when she comes back from injury, the freshman. How are you thinking about like the guard rotation this year, and how using like all of your strengths, right, as individual players to make like a real cohesive unit on the floor?
I mean, obviously I'm surrounded by really, really great players, and I feel like we all bring something different to the table. So I'm honestly just really excited for us to all finally be able to go out there and like play together against another team and sort of put it all together, because we have a lot of great pieces, and I'm excited to see how it all works out. And I mean, Coach knows what he's doing, so I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, I think he's probably earned the confidence at this point. I'm interested. You mentioned kind of bringing different things to the table. I'm just interested, kind of on a personal level. Like, is there a part of your game that you're most excited for UConn fans to discover? That maybe that if they haven't seen you play before and like this is their first time seeing you play, is there a certain part of your game that you're most excited to get to kind of introduce to this new fan base?
I don't really know.
That's okay. I mean, look, you guys are kind of all around, so like it's fine. Like it's, and I'm sure it'll probably be different by the night as well, like depending on how the games go and everything. So I feel you. That's okay.
I'm also curious because you came. Sorry, Andrew. You came here. You know, you were a like a fringe All-American player, an outstanding player in the Ivy League. And UConn had a couple of transfers a couple seasons ago, one who went 5th in the draft and Lulu Lopez finished out. I'm curious if her success and like integration in the program, if it influenced your decision to come here and see how effective you could be as a grad transfer.
I mean, definitely a little bit, just seeing the high level of success she was able to have in a similar type of transition. I feel like it's sort of hard not to look at that. But yeah.
So off floor, I'm super curious because your thesis that you wrote at Princeton, I think is fascinating. And if it ever publishes online, I am 100% going to read it. Is, you know, as it's stated, you know, the relationship between sports and meritocracy and how socioeconomic influences sports accessibility and athletic recruiting in that way. Could you, I don't, you know, you don't have to go through like the entire intro of the thesis here, but I guess, have you seen that play out a little bit, like over the course of your career, that influence writing the thesis in the first place? You know, what personal experiences did you have with basketball within your own recruiting, within what you've seen in the landscape that pushed you to find the expertise to write about that particular subject?
Man, you guys really went deep diving.
We do our research here in the podcast space. Come on.
But yeah, definitely there were some parts of like my recruiting experience. I think just like little stuff I picked up on throughout like the years. Like I remember in AAU, we got our butts handed to us by this one team from, I think it was Baltimore, and our coach after the game was like, they just wanted it more than you. Like, this is their way of getting to college, and you guys don't want it enough. Like, you're not willing to sacrifice everything for it because you know your parents are going to pay for your college and you're going to go get a college education regardless. So that was sort of the first time where I sort of thought about it like, yeah, he's probably right. Like, if I didn't play college, I would still be in college with the help of my parents. And then just being at Princeton and being surrounded by so many different sports I had no clue even existed, like squash, fencing. I didn't even know like those were things here, or like even field hockey, like such a big East Coast sport, but didn't know it was a thing at home. And sort of listening to their stories and how like they sort of got recruited, because I feel like the athletic community at Princeton's pretty small. Like, you get to know like your fellow athletes. So then when I was thinking about what I want to write about for my thesis, originally I was looking at like comparing these two high schools, a private school and a public high school in the nearby like Lawrenceville area. But then I was like, I feel like there's not enough information here and it's not interesting enough for me. So I ended up just like doing a bunch of interviews with a lot of my friends who played like a bunch of different sports and just hearing about their recruiting experiences and comparing them to each other and sort of seeing like what resources you would need for like, say, a lacrosse or like a squash compared to like a sport like basketball where it's more easily accessible throughout the country. So that's sort of how it all came to be.
Is it interesting to see at UConn now where, you know, it very much is, it's national recruiting, you know, it's kind of a pastiche of different backgrounds and places and environments. And then you also factor in the NIL stuff too, because, you know, you have a player on your team that is sort of a de facto celebrity at this point in Paige Bueckers. Given the experience that you've had, the research that you've done, is it kind of wild walking into an environment like this that, you know, I guess you could make somewhat of an argument that like it is more diverse in background than Princeton was, but then there's also this additional element that comes with it of the access that people get once they get to UConn and how big the stardom can be once they arrive there.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think the whole NIL and that whole aspect of it, I didn't know what I was walking into or expecting, but it definitely was a shock to me when I first got here. Yeah.
What part about it do you feel like shocked you in that way? Like, was it just like the investment into it, the emphasis on it? Like, was there some kind of an aspect of the NIL that was just different in that way?
Maybe not even specifically that. Well, also coming from Princeton, we didn't really have a lot of NIL stuff, so it wasn't really like a thing. So I think just NIL in general for me was sort of a shock. Yeah. And I guess I knew people loved UConn basketball, but I didn't realize the extent that they do. So
yeah, it's just the beginning. As the season goes on, but you bring up NIL, and I saw on your Instagram, it looks like you may have got like one of your first deals with Peach Slices, right? Which is like a skincare line. Can you tell us like how that came about? And I'm sure you've had a couple of offers. So why was that like the first one you wanted to go with?
They sort of just reached out to me, and so I did some like research. You know, I went on TikTok, saw what the people were saying about Peach Slices, and it seemed to be like overwhelmingly good comments and things said. So I was like, you know, yeah, this is something that I think I do want to be a part of. And so it sort of happened pretty quickly, like within like the past 2-3 weeks. But pretty exciting. Yeah.
What's it been like watching Paige in that respect? You know, because obviously you guys are all there for basketball first and foremost, but NIL, I think, has really introduced this idea that you become a business and a brand as a person much earlier than you used to, you know, instead of going to the WNBA and then that entire marketing push really kicks in terms of endorsements and sponsorships. You're getting it now at the college level. I mean, does she move different than like other players that you have, you know, played with, worked with? No. Or does that stuff really stay at the door when you walk onto a practice court and when you guys play together? Because I'd imagine, knowing Geno, he's a little old school. I don't think he's letting the NIL stuff into the
definitely not. Like, all of that stays out there, you know?
Yeah. Has she pulled you into a TikTok yet?
No.
Are we?
I personally am not a big TikToker.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask. I was like, is
you want to be pulled into?
No. Okay, so we'll leave you out of that. I am interested, and we ask almost everyone that comes on here. So just on the topic of NIL, we manifest here in the No Cat space. This is what we try and do. If you had a dream NIL deal, who would it be with? And what, like, the marketing or the plan, if you have any vision for this deal, what would it be? So who would it be with? And if there is a vision for it, what is the vision for it?
That's hard. I feel like dream NIL deal, I feel like it's got to be Nike, you know? I feel like every athlete dreams about that growing up, like having a deal with Nike. Like, it's just,
you can't go wrong with that. You know, like, you can't go wrong with that at all.
Yeah,
that's super valid.
What's a dream campaign look like? Would it be like apparel, signature shoe, or something else?
I feel like signature shoe. Like, once again, come on, you have your own shoe.
You can't go wrong.
That's so true.
You really can't.
So part of me, part of me thinks that you went to UConn because you have pro aspirations, right? You know, we just watched one of the most amazing WNBA finals in WNBA history. What kinds of things are you working on over the next, you know, give it 6 months to like prepare you for that next level?
I think I'm just trying to learn as much as I can while I'm here for the next 6 months, because I feel like it's a new environment. I'm surrounded by new players, really great players, and really great coaches that I can take a lot away from. So I'm just trying to, like take it all in, and like hopefully that helps me develop into the player that I have to be.
Yeah. When it comes to your impact now that you are at UConn, right? Because I think what's been really interesting is seeing different women of color make major inroads within this world of basketball, right? Like there is a big Hispanic American revolution happening with women in this sport. Leah Chavez and coming up in recruiting, Natalie Nakasi, first Asian American woman to be a WNBA head coach at the Golden State Valkyries. Does that stuff ever penetrate for you? Is just, a cause or a representation larger than yourself, especially now that you have the UConn platform behind you, what you have the ability to do for young women who look like you that may have or might still be overlooked on a basketball court, and what you can accomplish on behalf of a greater populace here?
No, that is definitely something that is important to me. I just feel like as an Asian American, I was really lucky because growing up in California, there is a pretty big Asian American basketball community. So I always sort of had someone that I could look up to, but then sort of moving away from there and hearing stories about other people who grew up in other parts of the country where there aren't so many like Asian American athletes to look up to, and they're just because of the demographic of where they grew up. I feel like it is really important to have sort of a role model that looks like you. So I'm sort of hoping that I can be that for kids across America, since I do have a slightly bigger, more visible platform now, to sort of just inspire them that they can do it too. I mean, it's the same way that like Jeremy Lin did that for a lot of Asian American athletes, and sort of just show them that it's possible for people like us. Yeah.
How old were you when Linsanity happened?
I was in 3rd grade, and I can't say that I was the biggest fan because I remember they beat the Lakers, and I was diehard Lakers fan. So
I respect it. Mad. Look, I respect that. Like,
yeah, that was coming out. Honestly, it was the game against the Lakers.
Yeah, I was not happy about that. Just my parents are like sitting on the couch, and they're like, "Wow, like he's amazing," and I was just like in my room. I was so mad.
So like, how did if you were a diehard, if you're feeling like that about the Lakers, like was that like just like was the Lakers just a formidable part of like your basketball like interest developing? Like is that like a part of your basketball origin story of sorts of like kind of what got you into it, or like was there kind of a different part and the Lakers were just like an add-on to that? Because I mean, if you're California, it's the Lakers. Like that's what it's all about.
They were definitely a huge part of like why I love basketball. Because I started playing like I think 1st grade, and that was when they won back to back in when I was in 1st and 2nd grade. So obviously I'd sit on the couch every night watching play, and I was a huge Kobe fan because how can you not be once again? So that's a big part of how I got into basketball and why I think I care so much.
Yeah.
Who in AAU? You mentioned, you ran up on a team from Baltimore and they got you pretty good. Who was a player in AAU that gave you personally the work, and who's someone that we would know now that you gave the work to in AAU?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think. For Nike Nationals, we lost to Kaitlyn Clark in all Iowa attack in the championship game. I think we might have made her mad some partway through the game. She sort of went off on us.
Yeah, she tends to do that. I don't. That's not no shame in that. No shame in that. Like,
who did I can't remember like anyone specific, honestly. Like we played really well. I don't know. We played really well as a team. Like I think
I like it.
Like, I feel like it's different now. It's different now, you know, because everyone just switches teams and they don't play more than like a year on one team. But our team actually like stayed together for, I think, like all 4 years of high school, which I feel like was pretty special. So we played really well together.
Who was on that roster with you?
Vanessa De Jesus, she's at Duke. Alexis Whitfield, she's at Oregon now. Kimberly Villalobos, she's at San Diego State, and Asia Avenger, who's at Georgia.
There you go.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good little squad there you got, man.
That's solid talent. Yeah. I'm interested in kind of speaking of just talent generally. I feel like the Ivy League is always underrated. Like just like that's a team I never want to see an Ivy League team on the schedule. I just don't. And like even like we see like as players grad transfer out, like we saw it with USC last year, like with multiple Ivy League players on their team. I'm just interested, how good is the Ivy League? And like, do you feel like the Ivy League just as a whole has just been underrated, generally speaking, across the country?
I think that it definitely has. I feel like there's sort of this stigma sort of associated with Ivy League basketball where they just like, they're just academics and they don't really care as much about sports. But I feel like that's not true. And I feel like we've sort of proved it now a little bit, especially with women's basketball. And I mean, being a 2-bid league last year is pretty special. And I feel like it just continues to take steps forward because as we like do well and gain sort of like national attention, then more players want to come play for the Ivy League. And I feel like it's a unique route that's different from other Division I basketball schools just because of the academic portion of it. But I think it's definitely a special 4 years that like I mean I understand why people do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean you gotta you completely understand it. I'm interested as well because you kind of mentioned like several different differences just from like West Coast to East Coast, whether it be the sports, the demographics. Was there any just like oh my God, this is very different, like just moments that you had like from moving just from coast to coast?
I think when I first got to Princeton, those first few weeks, I was like, oh my God, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
That was the biggest one.
It is weird. Like, yeah, Princeton's weird in that respect too, because like you expect it to be semi close to either Trenton or Philly, and then it's just kind of like in a field like that.
Yeah.
Did you get like, cabin fever, like stir crazy being there, especially in the winter? Because like the winters up there can get rough too.
Yeah. Honestly, it wasn't that bad because I was always with my friends and they sort of made my experience. I always talk about like whenever people ask what the best part about Princeton is, it's definitely the people. Like I feel like without the people I would have met there, my experience wouldn't be anywhere as close to how great it was. So that part wasn't so bad, but what did get me is when it would rain twice a week, and I like at home it rains twice every 6 months.
A year? Like
and I'm not a big fan of rain, so that got me for sure.
Fair.
Well, I'm happy that it's prepping you for stores because stores in the winter time different than Princeton. And isolated kind of campus, right? Just like that's all that there is right there. And now you can like the goal is very clear for you. I'm curious, you are a grad transfer. You guys have a lot of young pieces. You're only here for 1 year. So how are you like approaching leadership, right? There's people who are vocal, there's people who lead by example. How are you approaching leadership in the limited time that you're with this team?
I feel like there's sort of a balance that has to be found because I'm still sort of figuring out my way, but at the same time, I feel like I do have a good amount of basketball experience collegiately, so I'm just trying to be more and more vocal as sort of like the weeks pass and I feel more comfortable in the environment that I'm in, because I feel like it's very important for our team, especially with how young we are. So just figuring it out along the way.
I have one Princeton question before I get back to the UConn stuff. Given what the academic athletic balance is at Princeton, I remember when we were trying to interview you the first time around when you were still there, the SID was like, she's working on her thesis, so I don't think she'll have a lot of time. And initially I was like, yeah, that tracks. Like, Ivy League, this makes sense. what was the hardest assignment you were ever given where you were like, I don't know, like basketball and school, I don't know if I can balance these because this is killing me at home right now?
Honestly, I think it would be my junior paper because I think because I struggled so much with my junior paper in terms of like time management and that stuff, it made my thesis a lot easier because I started it way earlier because I really did not want a repeat of what happened the year before. But I remember I was just so stressed that week that it was due. It was a really, really rough week.
So what was the junior paper on?
It's on a topic of your choice within sort of the your major, and it's like it's not that bad. It's maybe like 30 to 40 pages.
Not that bad. Oh my goodness. Oh my God. You just yelled
compared to what we had to do for our thesis, it wasn't that bad. I'll put it like that.
How long was the thesis? Just
I think mine was 86 pages.
We're all state school grads.
Yeah, look, man. Don't look up what Oklahoma's like state education ranking is at or anything like that. Don't do it. No, that's crazy. Nah, ain't no way.
Yeah,
80s.
But I saved it for like the last week to finish it because it was due like maybe like a week or two after we had finished our season, and I didn't do it during season at all. So it was a rough 2 weeks.
Yeah, I feel that. As a professional procrastinator, I absolutely understand that component. You're doing sports management at UConn as a grad student there, and that feels kind of the perfect place to do it, especially in the world of women's basketball. There's a former Princeton player, Bella Allery, who is now at Georgetown, and part of her job description is handling the NIL experience, brand deals, marketing yourself for those players there in DC. What about that particular emphasis as a grad student is intriguing to you? And do you think women's basketball is moving into a place where it becomes a really fascinating area of study, especially considering the fact that we have a potential labor dispute on the horizon, that could come between the WNBA and the WNBPA?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of it is really exciting to research or like look at. Honestly, just being in a class about sports is really exciting for me because I've never taken a class on sports before in like my 4 years. So there's that part. And then our sport and society class that I'm in right now, our teacher or our professor did a really great job, and she centered it around actually the WNBA. So everything we've learned about in that class has been surrounded or has been on women's basketball, which I think has been pretty cool. Just the fact that there are so many topics to talk about within women's basketball to make it a class has been really exciting. So we've definitely kept up with everything going on.
Yeah. When the professor asks a question to the class, does everybody just turn and look at you? That is like
sometimes I feel like I should know the answer and I don't, and I'm like
go back. So to the basketball piece, have you had like this is Geno moment yet? Like you hear all of these stories about Geno. He is, such a seminal, monumental figure in women's basketball, in collegiate basketball, in American sports. Have you had like a moment yet that was like wow, Geno's yelling at me?
I can't say I've had that particular moment yet, but I'm sure it'll be coming soon.
Don't you worry, you got a whole season. Don't. Oh, go ahead.
Tyler, you have some?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. The last thing that I had for you, and we really do appreciate how generous you've been with your time with us. You talk about that kind of balance of leadership that has to occur, right? You've got a young team. You've also got someone in Paige who, has the bona fides and is an upperclassman. But I would also imagine that part of what the pitch was to get you to UConn was the fact that there is a secondary role there and even a primary role in certain times because somebody also needs to keep her accountable as well. That you were sought after for this. Was that ever a conversation between you and Geno, between you and Carla, or what Carla and Geno talked about, that, you know, there is a role here for you that we need intangibly that you can help fill? And do you feel confident in the ability to do that, especially for these younger kids? Because, I mean, you've been on ESPN in the NCAA tournament. Like, we've seen you out here. And does that past experience empower you to walk into an environment like this and say, no, I've got bona fides myself, and I have the ability and the confidence to hold this person or that person accountable in a way they need to be for us to win and get better?
Definitely. I definitely think all of that is true. And I feel like I'm just relying on the things that Coach Berube has taught me, and sort of like my experience, my whole 4 years there, and sort of growing and learning from those who came before me there, and sort of using that here as best as I can. Yeah.
Are you excited? Like, the easiest
gotta be.
Definitely
into this, like, what has you most excited for this year, and what is something that UConn fans should be excited for when it comes to you, and what should they watch for when it comes to you?
I'm just excited to play with this team. I feel like we have so many really great pieces, and I'm excited to see it all come together. Yeah, I can't wait to play with everyone.
I love it. Well, Kaitlyn, we're excited to see you play with everyone. This team is going to be so much fun, and we're so excited to see you get the shine that you deserve. Like I said, we've been locked in. We know what's going on in the Ivy League. We're tapped in with that, so we're very familiar with your game, and we're very excited to see it on this big stage. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, make sure you guys stay tapped in with the No Cap Space for Tyler, Andrew, Greer. Make sure you hit all the links down below, and we'll see you next time.